Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another reading vlog. So this week I am going to be reading all of the fiction books nominated for the National Book Award for 2021. I've never tried to read this many pages in a week, and I've never read all of the books on the shortlist for a book prize, although it has been a long-term goal of mine. So I'm really excited to see what I end up thinking of all these books, and of course at the end of this video ranking them and picking my choice for the winner of the National Book Award for 2021. So I have actually already read all the books. This is me in the future just filming the intro to this vlog. I'm going to briefly talk about them here, and then I will send you back to past Sophia to chat you through all of my thoughts. So here's the stack. Let me just give you a brief little blurb about each of them because I'm going to be going into a lot more detail as I actually read the books. But the first one is Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr, and Anthony Doerr is the author of one of my favorite books of all time, All the Light We Cannot See. And this is a book that is kind of hard to give you a blurb about, but it is set in different time periods across a huge range of history and follows different characters and just kind of like blends their stories together. It's described as a love story to books, and I will get into this one more when I read it. Then we have The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. This is a book about two gay slaves that are in love. Next up is Zori by Laird Hunt. This is a book about a woman in 1930s Indiana and her life, just day to day doing odds and ends jobs. Then we have Matrix by Lauren Groff. This is a book about a real woman named Marie, but kind of like a interpretation of her life. She lived in the 1100s and basically it went to an abbey to bring it back from ruin. And finally, we have Hell of a Book, which is about an author who is on a book tour. And originally this book is kind of a satire. He's a Black author and he's discussing lots of the things that happened on his real book tour. But this author also has a condition where he doesn't know what is real and what is actually happening versus what he is imagining. And so throughout this book, you're trying to figure out what's kind of going on. So here is a stack. I'm very excited to see what I end up thinking about them and chatting with you about all of them. And I will see you at the end of the vlog to chat about my order and my ranking for all of these books. Happy Saturday, everyone. It has been a very quiet day. I've just been on the couch reading, flicking between college football games, and just having a very relaxed day. I made some pumpkin muffins last night, so I've been enjoying those throughout the day too. Anyways, I did do quite a bit of reading today, so I wanted to just update you on my thoughts. And I was kind of debating how I was going to do this reading vlog given that I'm reading so many books, but I think I am going to try and read them one at a time and get through each book one at a time so that I can really think about my feelings and not confuse my thoughts if I'm reading too many things at once. So the first book that I got was Cloud Cuckoo Land, which just came in the mail yesterday morning. I originally was going to try and get the rest from my library, but it looks like it's not going to happen. So I just ordered them all today and they should be here in the next few days. But I got this one first because it is insanely long, and I thought I should probably get started with it early. So briefly, this is set in 3 different time periods, past, present, and future, and you follow different characters in each of those time periods. So in the past time, you are following a young girl named Anna, who is kind of has her head in the clouds and is always daydreaming about things, not good at following tasks, which relatable. But she lives in a time where there's a lot of political turmoil and struggle, which is right before the fall of Constantinople, and she lives basically in Constantinople. So her daydreaming isn't always looked upon fondly by the headmaster lady that she lives with in this embroidery studio, I guess you could call it. I'm sure that there's a more 1400 ways of saying that. But anyway, she lives there with her sister Marie. And then this boy named I think it's Omir, but I'm not 100% sure how you pronounce it. But anyways, he lives in an outside village, and he was born with a cleft lip, so has always been looked upon as somebody who cursed the family or a monster, and so he really struggles with that. So those two characters are living in this time period and in this place on the brink of war, but also very much experiencing a coming of age type of story. So then in the present day, you are following a man named Zeno, who is an 80-year-old man, and he is extremely passionate about Greek mythology. And he is helping these high school age students put on a play called Cloud Cuckoo Land. And he's just so passionate about them being excited about this play. And he's at the library one day and he's just kind of like running through the dress rehearsal. Now, he is a Greek immigrant, and you do get a bit of his history in terms of how he came to America around the time of World War II and some of his family's history. But for the most part, we've been kind of in the present day. The other main character that you follow in present day 2020 Idaho is this boy named Seymour, who is essentially planning to bomb the library. So the first scene that you get of Seymour is him pulling up to the library in his car with a bomb. And you don't know why or what his backstory is, but you kind of go back in time and learn a little bit more about him. And then in the future, this is the time period that we've had the least of so far in the book. It follows a girl named Constance, and she is on a spaceship. And I honestly have no idea like what her purpose is or what she's trying to do, but I'm sure we'll get a bit more of her story in the coming pages. So that was a lot, and that's honestly how I feel reading this a bit. I'm on page 141 out of about 600 pages, and I have to say, like, I forgot how much I love Anthony Doyer's writing. I love that each character's motivations and their story and their backstory is so clear and so well thought out. To me, like, each person's story in itself is so fast-paced because you're just like so attached to them, and you have to know like why did they do this? Why is Seymour like in a position now where he wants to bomb a library? Like, how is Anna going to escape this war, or like what is she going to do? And I just find myself so attached to each of the people. However, my biggest issue right now with the book is I'm not really understanding why it needs to be these 3 time periods and why all of these characters need to be in the same book. And I'm sure that will be explained a bit later, but at the moment I just feel like I'm not getting the cohesion. I'm not getting the unity or the epiphany moments where I figure out like what it all means. And granted, there's still like about 500 pages where I am going to be able to get a bit more of that, but right now I'm just really struggling to kind of put it all together in my head. So that's kind of my first thoughts about Cloud Cuckoo Land. I am just loving being back in Anthony Doyer's writing and being in his characters' minds and in their stories. It's just such a breath of fresh air. And it makes me really want to reread All the Light We Cannot See, which I do think was a bit more of a focused, like, story from start to end, and there wasn't quite as much going on in this one, but it is making me really want to reread it because I'm remembering how much I adore his writing. All right, anyways, I am going to do a bit more reading, sit on the couch, watch my alma mater get destroyed in football every week. I don't know why I do it, but it's just tradition at this point. And hopefully get through about 50 more pages before I head to bed. And then tomorrow, a couple more of the books should be coming in the mail, so I'm excited to see them, see how many more pages I'm going to be getting through in the next couple of days. Alrighty guys, so it is Monday at night, and today was my first day back at work. I actually had a very relaxed day, and it was just really nice to like have a routine again. I don't know if you guys feel like this, but I love vacation, but I also like get a little bit crazy when I've like been on like away from work, whether it's like sick or I've been on vacation or something like that for too long. So it was nice just to like be back in the swing of things. And yeah, it was a good day. Weather-wise, it is definitely starting to feel like fall. I hadn't been outside in a while because of me not feeling super well, but when I went outside today, I'm like, wow, I just missed all of fall, and now we've just skipped right to winter. Anyways, though, it was a good day overall, and a very good day because I did end up finishing Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doyer. And honestly, my head is still kind of spinning from this one. I'm trying to figure out like my thoughts and everything, but I wanted to sit down while it was still really fresh in my head and just give you guys my initial reaction after having just finished it. So when I talked to you guys last, I was having a lot of issues with cohesion. I was really struggling to understand why these stories had to be told together. And I have to say, like, as I read the book more, I really understand the cohesion of these books. I really understand how each of these narratives really play off each other super well. and also how each of the stories kind of mirror and parallel this Greek text that you get little snippets of throughout the book. And I'm not a huge like book within a book person. It usually like bothers me and I get a little bit distracted reading it, but I thought that the text running throughout this book really enhanced each of the characters instead of distracting from their stories. Now, I was having trouble like figuring out how to talk about this book. So usually when I have issues like that, I go online and I watch other reviews because I'll usually find things that I really agree with and that I really disagree with, and then I'll figure out kind of where I fall. And that's what I did. And I saw a couple things that I really agreed with. And one of those is that this book feels like an onion. Like when you first read it, you're like, okay, great. It's 3 stories. I'm interested in all the stories, but I'm not really getting like the synergy. I'm not really like understanding the point. But as you start to see the connections and see how different themes are laid throughout each story and kind of put everything together, you really see how much each part of the story builds on each other and how deep this book really is. Now, there are so many themes that kind of run throughout this book, but at its heart, I really see this book as kind of like a love story or an ode to stories. And so you see stories being used to inspire, to comfort, to educate. And I really love how that was kind of woven into each plot. There's actually a great quote that I really appreciated, and this is from Zeno. He is the man who is in present day, and he is teaching the kids like this Greek play, and they're putting it on together. And there's this great scene on page 489 that says, you ever see a superhero movie where the hero keeps getting beat up and it always seems like he, end quote, and then one of the other girls says, or she will never make it. That's what these fragments are like, superheroes. Try to imagine the epic battle they survived over the last 2,000 years. Floods, fires, earthquakes, failed governments, thieves, barbarians, zealots, who knows what else. We know that somehow a copy of this text made it to a scribe in Constantinople 9 or 10 centuries after it was first written, and all we know about him or her is this tidy handwriting leaning slightly to the left. But now the people who can make sense of that old writing have a chance to breathe life back into these superheroes so that maybe they can do battle for a few more decades. Erasure is always stalking us, you know, so to hold in your hand something that has evaded it for so long. He wipes his eyes, embarrassed. And it kind of goes on from there, but I really think that highlights like the precious nature of books and how like books are regarded in this story in so many ways. And honestly, like there is so much more to this than what I can give in a brief review. But I just loved so many parts of it. I thought it was really, really well written. I think it is incredible that Anthony Doerr was able to make 3 really engaging time periods and 6 super engaging characters, and also tie them all back to a separate text and make it all cohesive and make them all come together. Like it kind of blows my mind how he was able to do that. And I just really, really, really loved it. I'm sure as I like mull this one over and think about it more over time, I will have more opinions, and I might actually do a full review of this because I think it's one that's going to kind of sit on my head for a while. But I think I'm going to end up giving this 4 stars. My one downside of this book was I prefer shorter, more concise books, and for me sometimes it did drag on a bit. But I think that that's more of a preference thing. I could definitely see people disagreeing with me on that. I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 5 stars, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. All right, and now I'm going to move on to the like opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to length, and that is Zori by Laird Hunt. I don't know a whole lot about this one, but it's only like 176 pages. It just came in the mail, and yeah, I really don't know a lot going into it, but I am excited to see what I think of the next book on the list. so it is currently Friday, although it doesn't really feel like Friday for me because I work all weekend, but that's okay. One thing very exciting that happened today was Red was released, hence this outfit, the only clean red clothes that I had. I don't know about you guys, but I grew up like listening to Taylor Swift's music because all of her albums came out at like significant times in my life. I don't know how that happened, but Red specifically came out during my freshman year of college, and I remember like just listening to this album walking to classes when it was really cold in the mornings and just loving it. And so listening to all of these songs again, and of course listening to her newly released music kind of in the theme of Red, has just been so lovely. Having said that though, I have been listening to Better Man on the way to work instead of listening to the audiobooks for the books I need to read for this vlog. So I'm a little bit behind on my reading progress, but I do have one book to chat with you guys about and then half of another book to kind of talk about where I'm at so far. So let's just get into some of my thoughts. All right, so the book that I have finished since I last chatted with you was Zori by Laird Hunt. This is a very short 176-page book about a woman who grows up in Depression era Indiana, and it's kind of about her entire life into World War II and beyond that. I don't know what it was about this book, but I just found it really refreshing to read a story surrounding the time of World War II that was just very quiet and understated and just kind of described kind of the quiet Midwestern life rather than all of the drama, of course, surrounding the war. And that isn't to say that there isn't heartbreaking moments in this book or there aren't kind of moments relevant to history in this book, because there certainly are, but it was just a lot more kind of subdued and quiet, I guess I would say is the word I would use to describe this book, and I really enjoyed that kind of perspective. There were lots of different side characters that kind of played a role in Zori's life, but this definitely does follow Zori pretty much exclusively throughout her whole life, and I actually really liked that focus and how concise it was. I think by doing that, the author really kind of connects you to her story, and while I think this book was pretty slow in terms of the plot, it was really, really well paced, and there was always something driving the book or kind of a tension within the book that you were interested to find out what would happen. This book kind of drew my attention to a part of the National Book Award that sometimes it gets criticized for, but something that I really enjoy about the prize, and that is that it doesn't always nominate the most popular or most read books within a year, and sometimes it uplifts books that have relatively not that much attention drawn to them, and that is the case of Zori. I think this one only has about 1,000 or 2,000 reviews on Goodreads, but I've seen a lot of people who have discovered it because of the book prize and really, really enjoyed it, and I am definitely one of those people. This isn't a book that I would have sought out on my own or known to pick up on my own, but I really, really ended up enjoying this one. I have to say, even though it was quite short, sometimes it was a little slow for me, so that was, I guess, the downside. I wish there was maybe a bit more going on or driving the story. It is quite descriptive, albeit with beautiful writing, but sometimes I wish there was a little bit more going on throughout it, but I did end up giving it 4 stars and did thoroughly enjoy reading this one. All right, so after finishing Zori, I have picked up Matrix by Lauren Groff. This is a book about a woman named Marie, and at the beginning of the story, she is basically assigned to go to this abbey to take it over, to lead it. It has really been crumbling and is not in a good place. A lot of the people that are there currently are sick, hungry. It's in financial ruin. It's just a very, very bad situation. So she goes there. And she originally really doesn't want to go. She has a lot of things making her want to stay home, but she ends up just kind of getting on her horse and going to this very bleak place. And in this book, you follow her ambition and her drive and her just like ruthlessness almost to making this place successful. It is so fun to read about female ambition and female drive and stories like that set in a historical context, because often in quote unquote like historical books, women are kind of like not given that authority and not given that personality, and I really, really love how Lauren Groff does that in this book. Why I said this is historical in quotation marks is that I don't necessarily see this as a historical book, because it's so much more about Marie's character and who she is and this kind of like redemption almost story for her, rather than it is a historical fiction. And I didn't really know that coming into the book, so I don't know that the marketing is super great for this one. But if you accept it as that, I think that you will really end up enjoying the book. So I'm on page 170. I have about 100 pages left, so excited to see how this one does wrap up. There are parts of this book that have been a little bit on the slow side. I alternate between being really obsessed with all of the characters and obsessed with the writing and the characterization and everything, to wishing that there was a bit more action and a little bit more going on. And I felt that way a little bit about a lot of the books that I've read for this vlog, but I think stepping back, kind of recognizing the merits of this and that it isn't meant to be like a plot-driven historical narrative, really has made me accept it for what it is. So currently I would say I would rate this maybe a 3.5 stars, but the end of course could change that, as with any book. All right, so I'm gonna hopefully finish that today, and I'm going to watch some college basketball. I'm a huge college basketball fan, and we're finally to the season where games are starting. So I'm gonna do a bit of that, a bit of audiobook listening, eat some dinner, maybe listening to a bit more read, and then heading to sleep because I have a long weekend of work ahead of me.
Just where it was needed, gleaming black as night, cloistered in injustice, dead in the eye of time. Nobody is losing.
All right, so it is now Tuesday, the night before the National Book Award gets announced, and I am just frantically filming clips because I have done a terrible job of updating you guys about my thoughts. But I have been doing so much reading. So I want to just wrap up my thoughts about the rest of the books, and then we will get into all of my rankings and my prediction for tomorrow's winner. So first up, I ended up finishing Matrix by Lauren Groff. So I gave this one, I believe, 3.5 stars. My thoughts about it didn't really change from when I last talked to you. I really enjoyed so much of it, but I just felt like I wish that there was a tiny bit more plot kind of running through this story. However, I have rarely read such an amazing depiction of female ambition, specifically in a historical context, and I just really, really enjoyed it. This is one that I really did enjoy the audiobook narrator, but I kind of want to reread again the actual book itself, because the writing in here was just so gorgeous and I would just love to relive it. And yeah, so if this gets shortlisted for another book prize, or if I am so feeling inclined, I may reread this one in the future. All right, I also made my way through The Prophets. So this book is about two slaves, Isaiah and Samuel, who are on a plantation and they are in love. And in this story, you kind of get different people's perspectives. I actually thought it was going to be much more like from Isaiah and Samuel's perspectives, but you get each chapter is like from the perspective of a different person that is part of this plantation. There also is a lot of biblical references and really interesting ways that it is set up. Like, for instance, one part is called Proverbs. There's like a chapter called Genesis, and so I think that that definitely added a lot to the story. Unfortunately, I am not a particularly religious person, so I think I did miss some of the references, and I think I did miss a little bit of the context of this book, unfortunately. But I have to say the writing in here was so beautiful. I really appreciated that this was a book about LGBTQ characters in a historical book. And I feel like so many books about like slavery don't really discuss that. I think the downfall for this was that I felt that there were so many parts of it that I just wish that I understood, and I wish that I was able to kind of grasp a bit more. Not that you can't read this book if you aren't familiar with the Bible, but I just think I might have gotten a little bit more out of it. I think I ended up giving this one a 3.5 stars. And finally, the last book that I just finished like 10 minutes ago before filming this clip is Hell of a Book by Jason Mott. This book is about a author, or I actually watched an interview from him, which is kind of ironic because a lot of this book is about somebody on a book tour and doing TV interviews, but it's about kind of his experiencing touring for his last book. Not that the author in this book is like perfectly based on him, but that's kind of where the jumping off point of this book was. And then you're also following this little boy named Soot, and you don't know who he is. You don't know how he relates to this author, if he was this author, if it, like really what his role in the story is. And then the other thing is the author like will see things that aren't happening. And so he's a bit of an unreliable narrator in that you don't really know like what is real and what is not real. So throughout the book, you're trying to connect these different like bits and pieces. I loved this book so much. I thought that the interplay between humor and just heartbreaking moments and what it said about race currently and racism currently was just so poignantly done. And I think that it does it and discusses it in a way that I haven't seen before. Thought it was extremely readable. I read this in one day and just thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, it just has so many different aspects to it and so many different elements that I really appreciated. I've heard some people kind of say that it got a little bit difficult to kind of maybe interpret with this unreliable narrator and all these characters, but I didn't find that at all. I ended up giving this one a 4.5 stars and really enjoyed it. Hey everyone, Sophia here, popping in to close up this vlog and just wrap up my week reading all of these fantastic books. So, first of all, a couple of thoughts about this week. It was quite an overwhelming week, to be honest with you, to read this much, and I am glad that I challenged myself to do it. I'm really glad that I went through this experience, but it was a lot to process in a week, and I wish I would have given myself a bit more time to really give these books the attention and the time they deserved. I wish I would have started them a bit earlier, and I do wish I also would have given myself time to read them more physically, because I ended up having to read them on audiobook for the most part to get them done in time for this video. And it kind of is what it is. Like, I really wanted this video to be up in time for the announcement. I really wanted to get through all of them. I was really excited to see what I would think of all of them. So I think there are pros and cons to any way of reading a book, but I just found that I wish I had a little bit more time to kind of think through them. The other thing I will say is I have no idea how judges pick the winner of these book prizes. It is so subjective, and even looking at all these books, they're all exceptional, like really well written, really important books, and the books on the bottom of my list are not bad books. It's all just preference. So anyways, I'm going to give you my order for what it's worth, but I would highly recommend all of them. I really enjoyed reading all of these books. It's just whatever books I resonated with the most versus what I resonated with the least. And I honestly don't know how the judges pick any of these prizes, but you know, book prizes have more purpose, I think, than just, you know, a winner and a loser. Some of these books were promoted and people read them because they were on the short list. So I like to think of it more that way rather than this is like for sure a winner versus a loser book. So anyways, let's get into my order. I think at the bottom would probably be Matrix by Lauren Groff. I just struggled a bit with the pacing. I would love to reread this one as a physical book, but as an audiobook, it was just a bit difficult for me to get through at times. Next is The Prophets, mainly because of the references that I unfortunately didn't get, and I just failed a little bit to understand the point of the structure of it at times, but I did really love the writing. Next up would be Zori for me. I loved how concise this was. I love how it just told one person's story from start to front. It wasn't flashy, but it was heartbreaking, and I thought the writing was exceptional. Next up was Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. It blows my mind how well he weaved together all of the stories in this book and how cohesive it was and how it all fit together. It was incredibly heartbreaking at the end, and I just think it all worked so well. However, was just a tad bit on the long side for me. And my favorite book was Hell of a Book by Jason Mott. I never heard anything about this book. I didn't really know anything about this book, but it was just really great. I think it was the perfect balance of really funny, really heartfelt, really important, really true. And so this was my pick for all of the books on the National Book Award list for this year. Definitely going to be rereading this one soon too, because I just feel like there was a lot in here that I just love and wanted to reread over and over again. All right, guys, so this is my personal order. I would love to know what you thought, what your favorite book was, and who you think is going to win the prize tomorrow. I don't know if Hell of a Book is going to win, but I'm just going to say I think it's going to win because it was my personal favorite. But would love to know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I will see you guys very soon with another video. Bye.